Hi, this is Kimber Spradlin, Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Moka5, and today we're going to talk a little bit about compliance. IT regulations have been in place since the 1990s. You have HIPAA, GLBA, Sarbanes-Oxley, all of your international data privacy standards, and yet organizations are still struggling with the implications, especially as new technologies come on board. And then you also have the special case of PCI, which is from the credit card industry. Even though it's not a regulation, there's really not much choice if you're accepting credit cards about complying with it. Now, unfortunately, these regulations really just say, thou shalt have good security. They don't have a lot of detail in them. So most companies have either developed standards on their own, they've turned to ISO, or maybe COBIT or the NIST set of security controls. And these give you a little bit more specifics, right? So they give you the details around what you should do for physical security, for policy, for employees, education, but they also lack a certain amount of specificity when it comes down to security configurations. And this is very much on purpose because those configurations are going to change very rapidly, and they don't want to have to be updating these standards every 3 to 6 months as new vulnerabilities are found, as new operating system and application versions are released. So at that point, it's really best to look at either the vendors for guidance or, again, some NIST standards and other places where you can find configuration best practices. And as I mentioned before, PCI is a little bit of an outlier. It does have a lot more specifics in it. In general, what we found is that organizations over the last 15, 20 years or so they've tackled network security, intrusion detection systems involving into security information and event management systems. They've really tackled the servers, the database, the applications, and what's been left, what hasn't been really handled all that well, is the end user computing environment. Okay, so we're simplifying by looking at this from an insider versus outsider perspective. If we think about the insider threat, there's really the accidental loss of protected data, and that might be somewhat on purpose, but really the employee's just trying to get their job done, versus the more malicious attacks. So in your accidental loss, you're really trying to prevent the employee from doing something they shouldn't, and that would be often companies deploy something like data loss prevention tools, printing, USB controls, making sure that sensitive data is not emailed out through a web-based email system or even through the company's internal email system. And there's a lot of protections that we can put in place there. Now, your more malicious insider threat is the one that's nearly impossible to protect against. I mean, if a user is absolutely determined to take a picture of their screen with their camera phone, there's only so much you can do about that. Now, if you're talking really, really sensitive information, perhaps in government installations, there are physical security measures you can take to ensure that employees don't bring any kind of phone or camera phone into the premises, but that's really the limit there. So what you can do is show due diligence, that you have done everything you could as an organization to protect against the loss of that sensitive data. And while this may not save you from the bad publicity, it can save you from some of the fines and other things that could come along with a data breach. Your outsider threat is the one that, as we mentioned before, things like your security information event management tools, auto response tools, risk detection, anti-malware suites, personal firewalls, that's what those are meant to protect against. So now let's take a look at how Moka5 can help in this situation, simplifying the end user computing environment. With Moka5's secure PC container, what you can do is you can take that employee's work laptop and really separate it into 2 computers. So within the container, you can place the applications that deal with the regulated data and really wall those off. You can really completely lock down that environment, not allowing any kind of user admin controls, preventing any software from being installed, leaving out all the unnecessary applications, all the way to the point of not including Microsoft Office, no email client, no web browser, limited amounts of Java components, perhaps even getting rid of Flash altogether. This basically gets rid of all of the attack vectors against those applications. Now, of course, some of those things you may have to include because they may be necessary for the employee to get their work done, but it really reduces that threshold. And the employees are accepting of this kind of environment because with one click they can be off in their regular work environment where they might be allowed to install some applications, do a little bit of personalization, make the screensaver a picture of their kids, whatever it might be, do their email, their Excel spreadsheets, and their PowerPoint in that base host environment. Meanwhile, in the secure container where you've placed these regulated apps or the applications that deal with regulated data, that container is encrypted with 256-bit encryption. You can prevent the use of USB, CD, DVD drives, printers from the host machine, so there's no way for data to exit that way. If you've left out any kind of email client and web browser, then it's extremely difficult for the data to leave the container through email because it's just not present. And you've locked it down, as well as that container includes in it AV scans and custom host check scripts. Those two things ensure that while the container is protected, it's running on a secure host as well. So ensuring that there's no malware like keyloggers or screen scrapers that could potentially retrieve data from the container even though the malware sits in the host. If those things are found to be present, then the container never presents the logon screen. So again, those keyloggers can have no opportunity to capture any kind of ID and password. And that really separates out that regulated data and the applications that deal with that regulated data from the rest of the employee's work environment. Now, it is possible to use this model of a secure PC container with your regulated data and applications in the container in a BYO kind of scenario, or perhaps with contractors where the organization does not own the device. This is really not recommended for employees that deal with regulated data on a very frequent basis, but it is something handy to have for someone who just needs temporary access. In fact, you can set a policy that will time out that container and wipe that container at the end of 30, 45, 60 days, whatever you set that time limit at. So that's a great way as well to provide temporary access. The end user self-provisions with one of those secure containers for regulated data. This is also many of our clients use this approach for XP preservation, and I mention that because there's a strong degree of overlap between companies that have been unable to get off of Windows XP and applications that deal with regulated data. Many of those were custom built on XP. They're just too expensive to port at this time. Well, one of the other great things about Moka5 is that that container can be a Windows XP environment and will continue to be supported. Hopefully this has given you just a taste of what Moka5 can do to help you with your compliance area. If you would like a lot more detail, please just visit moka5.com. Click in the Why Moka5 bar and you'll be able to find all of our white papers, including one that we label multi-persona environments for protecting regulated data, and it'll go through the same material in a lot more detail. Thank you and have a great day.